Last Tuesday, I watched someone have a breakdown in a church parking lot. Not crying, not praying, just sitting in their car, engine off, staring at nothing. And I almost kept walking, because that's what you do, right? You give people their space. You don't intrude. But something made me knock on the window, and when she rolled it down, I asked her if she was okay. You know what she said? She laughed. Not like it was funny, like the question itself was absurd. Then she said something I can't stop thinking about. I just spent 2 hours counseling someone through their marriage crisis. I'm leading a small group tonight. I have 3 people texting me right now who need something, and I sat here because I realized I have nowhere to go. No one I can call. No one who would even think to ask if I'm okay. Then she looked at me and said, "Isn't that pathetic?" I said no. But driving home, I realized she's not alone. And that's the problem. She's not alone in being completely alone. Don't go anywhere. I'm not your average Christian channel. I'm Scriptora Faith Haven, and we don't do surface-level faith here. We do the uncomfortable conversations, the ones your small group leader won't touch, the theology that messes with your tidy worldview. And this topic was one's personal for me, because I used to be the person in that parking lot. So if you've ever wondered why you can hold everyone else's pain but can't figure out where to put your own, if you've ever resented the people you're helping while simultaneously being terrified they'll stop needing you, if you've ever felt guilty for wanting someone to ask how you're doing, stay and subscribe, because I'm building something different here. A place where we tell the truth about what it costs to follow Jesus. Not the Instagram version, the real one. Hit that button. You won't regret joining this community. Here's what nobody wants to say out loud. Some of us didn't choose to be everyone's safe place. We were voluntold by our trauma. Let me explain. There's this concept in psychology called parentification. It's when a child is forced to become the emotional caretaker for adults in their life. Maybe your mom was depressed, and you learned to manage her moods. Maybe your parents were always fighting, and you became the mediator. Maybe you were just the responsible one, the one who kept everything from falling apart. And here's what happens to those kids. They grow up believing their value is directly proportional to their usefulness. They become adults who are terrified of having needs. Because needs were liabilities in childhood. Needs got you rejected. Needs made you a burden. So you learn to be the opposite. You learn to be needed instead of needy. And it worked. People love you. They trust you. They come to you. But here's the cost nobody mentions. You're not actually close to them. They're close to you. They know you. You don't know them. Wait, I said that wrong. They know the version of you that can help them. They don't know the you that's hanging on by a thread, because you've never shown them that version. And now you don't know how. Let me tell you about a passage of Scripture we've completely misunderstood. Galatians 6. You know it. Everyone quotes verse 2. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. Beautiful, right? We build entire theologies of service around this verse. Whole ministries about being there for each other. But we stop reading. 4 verses later, Paul writes, "For each one should carry their own load." Wait. Verse 2. Carry each other's burdens. Verse 5. Carry your own load. Which is it, Paul? Here's what's happening in the original Greek, and this changed everything for me. Two different words. Burden, in verse 2, is baros. It means an overwhelming weight, something crushing, something too heavy for one person. Load, in verse 5, is choreo. It's a soldier's backpack. It's the normal weight of living your own life. Paul is saying, yes, help people when they're crushed under something too heavy. But also, don't try to carry what each person is meant to carry themselves. And here's the part we've gotten backwards. Some of you are carrying everyone else's portion, the normal stuff they should be handling, while your own baros, your crushing weight, sits in your chest unspoken, because you've been taught that being Christ-like means being endlessly available, endlessly patient, endlessly giving, never tired, never resentful, never empty. But that's not what Jesus modeled, and I can prove it. We love the stories of Jesus healing people, feeding the 5,000, comforting the broken, but we conveniently ignore the moments when Jesus walked away. John chapter 5, the pool of Bethesda. The Bible says there were crowds of sick people there, blind, lame, paralyzed. And Jesus healed one guy, then left. He didn't heal everyone. He didn't stay until every need was met. He healed one person and walked away. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being that selective? Sorry, I know you're hurting, but I'm only here for that one person today. We'd call that cold, unloving, un-Christ-like. But it is Christ-like, because Jesus knew something we've forgotten. You cannot be everything to everyone. Even he wasn't, and he was God in flesh. Luke 5:15-16 tells us, "Yet the news about him spread all the more, so that crowds of people came to hear him and to be healed of their sicknesses. But Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed." But the crowds were coming. People needed him. But he withdrew. He left people who needed help to go be alone with the Father. Why? Because even Jesus needed a safe place. Even Jesus needed to be refilled. Even Jesus had limits to his human capacity. And if the Son of God needed to withdraw, rest, and be restored, what makes you think you don't? Let me ask you something you're not ready to answer honestly. Do you resent the people you help? Not all the time, but sometimes. Late at night, when your phone buzzes again. When someone's venting to you about the same problem for the 6th time. When you're falling apart inside and someone asks you for advice. Do you ever feel angry? Then immediately guilty for feeling angry? Because good Christians don't resent serving people, right? Wrong. That resentment is data. It's your soul telling you something is off. And here's what I've learned. Resentment is what happens when you give from a place you're protecting instead of a place you're pouring from. Let me say that again, slower. Resentment happens when you give from a place you're protecting instead of a place you're pouring from. What does that mean? It means you're giving out of obligation, fear, or identity, not out of genuine overflow. You're not helping because you want to. You're helping because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Afraid they'll be mad. Afraid they'll leave. Afraid you'll lose your purpose. Psychologists call this compulsive caregiving. It looks like generosity. It feels like love. But it's actually anxiety. And anxiety-driven service always leads to burnout and bitterness. Always. You know what the solution is? Not trying harder to have a better attitude. The solution is getting your own needs met, so you stop expecting the people you serve to meet them. Because that's what's really happening. You're not just helping them. You're unconsciously hoping that if you help them enough, they'll finally see you. They'll finally ask. They'll finally care. But they won't. Not because they're bad people, but because you've trained them not to. Okay, pause. If your heart is racing right now, if you feel seen and exposed and maybe a little defensive, good. That means we're hitting something real. Do me a favor. Comment right now and just type, "I felt that." I want to know who's really hearing this. And if you haven't subscribed, I need you to. Not for me, for you. Because we're going places most Christian content won't go. And if this is resonating, you need more of this. Subscribe. Now. Let's keep going. I want you to try something with me right now. Think about your 5 closest friendships. Got them? Now ask yourself, do they know what you're actually struggling with right now? Not surface stuff. Not, "I'm tired," or "work is busy." Do they know what's really keeping you up at night? If you died tomorrow, would they be able to give a eulogy that reflects who you actually are? Or just who you've performed as? Here's a gut check question. In the last month, how many hours have you spent listening to other people's problems? Now, how many hours have you spent being truly vulnerable about your own? If the ratio is 10-1 or worse, you don't have friendships. You have an audience. And I know that sounds harsh, but it's true. Because friendship is mutual. It's not one person perpetually strong and the other perpetually needy. It's 2 people taking turns being strong for each other. Proverbs 27:17 says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Both pieces of iron get sharpened, not just one. If you're always the sharpener and never the sharpened, something's wrong. And I think you know it. You've just been afraid to name it. Because naming it means admitting, "I'm lonely. Even though I'm surrounded by people. I'm unknown. Even though everyone knows me. I'm exhausted, and no one notices." Can I tell you about a prayer I prayed that wrecked my life in the best way? I was in my car, driving home from another coffee meeting where I'd counseled someone for 2 hours, and I was tired. Not physically, spiritually. And I prayed something I'd never prayed before. God, I don't want to be needed anymore. I want to be known. I didn't expect what happened next. God said, "Okay, but that means you have to let people actually know you." And I realized I'd spent years being frustrated that no one saw the real me, while actively hiding the real me. I wanted people to magically intuit my pain, without me ever voicing it. I wanted them to ask how I was doing, while giving off every signal that I was fine. I was waiting for someone to rescue me, while being everyone else's rescuer. And God said, "You can't be known if you won't be seen, and you can't be seen if you're always performing." So I started an experiment. The next time someone asked, "How are you?" I told them the truth, not the polite version, the real version. And you know what happened? Some people couldn't handle it. They got uncomfortable. They changed the subject. They gave me a Bible verse and ran. And that hurt. But some people, leaned in. They said, "Tell me more." They said, "Me too." They said, "I had no idea. I thought you had it all together." And those people? Those became my actual friends. Not my audience, my friends. We have this idea in Christian culture that maturity looks like strength. The more mature you are, the less you need. But that's not biblical. That's Western individualism dressed in religious language. Biblical maturity doesn't look like needing less. It looks like knowing how to receive. Think about communion, the most sacred practice in Christianity. What are you doing? Receiving. You don't earn it. You don't deserve it. You don't bring anything. You open your hands and receive. And we do it over and over. Not because we're immature, but because receiving is at the heart of the gospel. Paul understood this. 2 Corinthians 12, he talks about his thorn in the flesh, some weakness, some struggle he begged God to remove. And God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." Then Paul says something wild. "Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Paul bragged about his weakness, not despite his faith, because of it. Because he understood, weakness isn't the opposite of faith. Pretending you have none is. And here's the practical reality. When you pretend you don't need anything, you rob other people of the opportunity to serve you. You rob them of experiencing their own usefulness in God's kingdom. Your self-sufficiency isn't humble. It's pride disguised as strength. Real humility says, "I need you. I can't do this alone. Will you help me?" And when you say that, you're not being weak. You're being human, the way God designed you to be. Let me tell you what happens when you go years without a safe place. You develop what psychologists call high-functioning depression. You're not falling apart visibly. You're still showing up, still performing, still serving. But internally, you're numb. You don't feel joy the way you used to. You're going through the motions. And you've convinced yourself this is just what adult faith looks like. Steady, stable, fine. But fine is not a feeling. Fine is what you say when you've forgotten how to feel. And here's the scarier part. Isolation literally changes your brain. Studies show that chronic loneliness triggers the same brain regions as physical pain. Your body experiences isolation as a threat. It releases cortisol. It increases inflammation. It weakens your immune system. Loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally. It hurts physically and spiritually. Isolation is where the enemy does his best work. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." Lions don't attack the herd. They attack the isolated one. The one separated from community. The one who's convinced themselves they're fine alone. That's who gets devoured. And I don't think that's metaphorical. I think isolation devours your hope, your faith, your sense of God's presence. You start to wonder if God even sees you, because nobody else seems to. And the longer you go without being truly known, the harder it becomes to believe you're worth knowing. So here's what I want to leave you with. Not a tidy conclusion, not 3 steps to find your safe place. but an invitation. What if the thing you're most afraid of is the thing you most need? You're afraid of being a burden. But what if you need to learn that you're worth carrying? You're afraid of being too much. But what if you need to discover that the right people won't think you are? You're afraid of losing your purpose if you're not needed. But what if your purpose was never about being useful and always about being loved? What if God is inviting you into something more terrifying than serving Him? What if He's inviting you to receive from Him, to stop performing and start resting, to stop managing and start trusting, to stop being everyone's safe place, and finally find your own, not someday, now, this week, today? What if you texted that one person, the one you've been thinking about this whole video, and you said, "Can we talk? I need a friend, not advice, just a friend." What if you stopped waiting for someone to notice you're drowning, and you said, "I'm drowning"? What if you prayed that dangerous prayer? God, I don't want to be needed anymore. I want to be known. And then actually let Him answer it. I don't know what happens next for you. I don't know if you'll do anything with this. But I know this. You weren't designed to be everyone's refuge while having none of your own. That's not Christ-likeness. That's martyrdom. And Jesus didn't call you to be a martyr. He called you to be His. Fully known, fully loved, fully held. So let Him hold you. And let His people hold you too. Subscribe to Scriptora Faith Haven if this messed with you in a good way. Like this if it hit home. And comment, tell me, what's the thing you're afraid to say out loud? Not for me, for you. Because sometimes naming it is the first step to healing it. I'll see you next time. And hey, you matter more than your usefulness. Remember that.